All right, so let's start first. Just you're obviously a multifaceted artist. I've read your bio and a few of the other interviews that you've done. Um, I'd like for you though to describe yourself as an artist with all these different moving parts that you've got. How would you put yourself out there?
I mean, I think simply stated, I'm an artist in the purest form of the word. Like I'm a creator that, a lot of times when you hear artists, when you hear the word artist, it might apply to one medium. Um, they just paint or they just play this instrument. And with me, I've always been blessed with a talent that, honestly, anything that I do in the creative aspect, I firmly believe that I can excel in that. And, hence I've had a music career. I started as a musician, as a songwriter, that transitioned into a career in the music business. And then that transitioned into me becoming a professional artist. And, in that same breath, like I've done acting and it's something I really want to get into, but I'm, just spending more time mastering my craft. Like I understand that you can spread yourself too thin. I understand you can do too much. So I'm not a fan of doing too much.
Right.
Uh, so I'm just taking my time, staying patient as possible, and just creating. But I'm an artist. I'm an artist that understands business, that understands the importance of the grind, the hustle, and as it relates to being able to make a living as an artist, being able to actually do what you want to do and make a living from that. So
Right, and you've done that quite well, and we've seen over and over. What your nom de plume vaccine? How did you create that? What was the impetus behind you creating this other name, this maybe even other persona?
Well, like I said, I was first an artist, a musician, and a writer. Like I was rapping and writing songs. And as a rapper, my name was, the short acronym was IV, which was short for I virus, I period virus, the letter I. And that was short for infinite virus. And, in essence means like the never ending virus. Like that's, kind of the approach. That's kind of what I represented. I'm the last person you want to cross in any aspect. So, vaccine, when I started getting into production, vaccines kind of served as the yin to the yang of me, as an artist, as a writer. And that's initially how it kind of began, like the cure to that virus. Just providing balance. And balance is very, very important in everything in life, definitely in my life and career. So that's where it started. And, it just kind of blossomed from there. So that's, the vaccine started as my producer name. And I mean, that's a hat, that's a role that I've never really had. I've never taken off, like I'm still a producer to this day. And that's, that's what everybody calls me, vaccine. So it didn't make sense to, okay, now I'm a visual artist, a professional visual artist. It didn't make sense to transition away from that. But honestly, I was initially when I like maybe the first year or so when I was pursuing art after I moved here to LA, I would be going by my government name as an artist, or you would see a lot maybe Otha, Vakseen, and within quotations, and my last name Davis the third, and then it slowly just began to where I would just more kind of stick with vaccine branding purposes wise. And honestly, I'm kind of conflicted now, because you want to be known, you want your legacy to be there, with an authentic name,
Right.
traceable. Ironically, I was reading through this book this morning, and it was talking about the importance of a character, if you will. Um, but it lists all these stars that we're very in tune with, from your Marilyn Monroe to Sting, Madonna, and it listed like all of their real names, and you kind of see why people, go with an alter ego, so to speak. But at the same time, it was amazing because if you heard their name, you would never put two and two together unless you were just a super fan.
Right.
So where I'm at now is like I tend to, when I do shows, like 9 times out of 10 it's gonna say Vakseen as far as the cards that are next to my paintings, but I've kind of started leaning towards the Otha Davis III, professionally known as Vakseen, just so people can kind of connect the two, and there's a connection starting early on, as opposed to me trying to do this 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line.
Well, you do have in your favor Otha Davis III is pretty dope name. I mean, you got
Yeah, I mean, I do like my name. I love my name. It's a unique name. It wasn't that when I was a child, but it's a mature name and something that always, ends up being a conversation piece. So it definitely works. I mean, when I looked at that list, like it had some horrible options. I was like, okay, that makes sense why they changed their name. But I've thought about before, like just going by Otha. But the biggest thing for me, I guess, the reason why I need that connection is because I've done so much in music with the name Vakseen, and so many people know me as that you don't want to start from scratch when it comes to branding, when it comes to people understanding your work. So I just want to make sure that there's never a question of who's who.
That makes perfect sense. So when you came to Empty Sink for our first issue, you submitted your three pieces, and we are branded as the magazine for intellectual deviance. What made you at the time feel like your art fit in with that theme and with some of the other things that we had posted on the site that gave everyone an idea of what we stood for? What intrigued you about us?
I think simply stated, the fact that you guys were providing a platform for young creators like myself to share our gift with the world. That's very important. And there are a lot, but there aren't really a lot of credible, genuine platforms. So I felt like there was a connection in that aspect, and you guys have ended up being one of my biggest supporters, and that's something that I forever cherish, and I'm truly thankful for.
Well, it's been a pleasure, being on the ride with you. And as we move into our next phase, I can promise you that you'll have our continued support from me, Brandon, and Sue Ann, regardless of what happens next. It's one of those things, and you're right. We were and are about getting people the chance to shine. Things that are a little different are often the things that are an improvement upon the norm, and that's why we like that deviant approach. Now, we were talking a little earlier about you're a multifaceted artist. Is there one particular form of art that you feel you're the best at, or that you enjoy doing the most?
I mean, I feel at this point, like my art is really, really, it might have even caught me by surprise, honestly. And, ironically, I've been into art since I was a kid. Like, that's the medium that I've been doing for the longest. But in high school, I kind of got turned off by the teacher I had, and it kind of took the back burner. And then at the same time, I got into music in high school, early high school, and that music bug just really took a hold of things. And I never, ever, not once thought about a career in art. So it wasn't until I moved here, and there was a point in time where I was creating music on a day-to-day basis where I'd fall asleep, working on music day in, day out. And as I got into the music business, I slowly had less time to create for my own projects. And I was still creating, but it was in a different form or fashion. Just because you're a producer doesn't mean that you're going to play all the notes. You might bring musicians in, you might direct guys to do this and that. Like that's what somebody, on the level of Quincy Jones did. So, that I was still creating, but, point being like, if I had continued to pursue creating music, maybe the answer would be something different. I probably wouldn't have ended up getting into art, but, the journey took me from creating as a musician to building in the music business, accomplishing all the goals I would want to accomplish as a musician. And then I still needed and craved that creative outlet. And that the door opened up, to get back into art and not just get into it, but to take things seriously and actually pursue it professionally. And that's, ironically, it was my music business experience that gave me that platform to stand on and that understanding of the entertainment business. So it's, there's times where I wish, that I was able to invest more time into my music, or things maybe went a little differently, but I'm so thankful for my journey, because I wouldn't be in the position that I am now. So art, to answer the question, long-ended, art. I think what I'm doing now, honestly, without being egotistical or anything of that nature, like what I'm creating is amazing. I'm really in love with what I do. I create for myself. I can tell you that first and foremost. Like I keep in mind what people will like, and I pay attention to that kind of thing, but I create for me, truly for me. I trust my taste. I trust my intuitions. And, I feel like if I think it's dope, if I think it's amazing, so will the world, So, yeah.
We've got a great track record there so far. I haven't seen anything that wasn't short of, spectacular.
And you won't. The good thing about, quality control, I'm not even going to, I sit with my concepts. Like if I were to show you right now, I have a bunch of concepts laying around the room, and I just kind of walk by them and make sure that I love them. And, I'm not even going to paint unless I love it. Now, granted, there might be like one or two pieces that I love less than others, but I'm really big on quality and consistency, so I can guarantee you're not going to see anything subpar coming from me at all. It's just not going to happen. Like it's important. That's important for your brand. Any brand, you have to have that consistency. So.
And it sounds like you earned that workflow from your music business days, because that sounds to me like how one would go about putting together a song. Often you've got a riff, or you've got a beat, a hook, and you kind of, sometimes you may keep it to the side while you're kind of working on other things, and you're like, no, yeah, now I know where that goes. So it's a similar workflow, isn't it?
Absolutely. A lot of different things. Like, I never realized it in the actual moment, but when I sit back and, I've done so many interviews at this point, and I was just able to realize like a lot of my creative process is very parallel to the way that I create, or that I would create as a musician when I was more hands-on. So it's just pretty interesting to see, how those kind of things transition over.
Absolutely. So let's talk about a little bit about what inspires you. I want to start with your roots. So you're from basically the area I'm from, North Florida, Georgia. How does your upbringing and the growing up in our region, how did that affect your art yesterday and today?
I mean, my life experiences go into what I'm creating. My work now, the heavy body of my work deals with insecurity. It deals with, if I have to say one word that my work evolves around, it's insecurity. Mm-hmm. And that's my experience growing up in Florida as a chubby kid to an overweight young male. And, life can be funny. Life is, we live in a superficial world, unfortunately. So, that's all of my life experience there in Florida. And then when I moved from Jacksonville to Miami, excuse me, the atmosphere change That's when my work in the business side of things actually took off. And Miami is a much more superficial city than Jacksonville. It's at the top when you talk about superficial cities. The only city I'd say is worse is maybe New York, and definitely here in LA. So I mean that definitely shaped me. I feel like Miami prepared me for what I'm encountering out here, but at the same time, I saw firsthand how many different procedures people, or women specifically, go through to fit the status quo, and to just to fit in with everything else that's going around. That was like one of the first things I noticed in a general sense when I moved to Miami. I was just like, it was very inspiring, and that's where I changed my health lifestyle. That's where I lost all the weight I did naturally. But it started from the initial observation that, wow, this, everything is on a different level. There's more money, the scenery is beautiful, the people are beautiful. It was just a whole step up, and it comes into play. Like, they're definitely play off of each other. The experience, and what in turn I put into my creative works.
Has being out in LA changed things for you as far as like what inspires you, or are you still kind of rooted in your old experiences?
Well, I mean, my experience is something that, I mean, obviously everybody's experience is near and dear to them, but the irony is that I grew up overweight, and now I'm in great shape, and I'm the same person. I'm the same exact person. Obviously, I've evolved as a man, as just an intellectual being, but I'm the same person. So, like that makes me feel a way. I don't really entertain, the fakeness that's out there that kind of ties into what I'm, my message as is. Insecurity is still the message, because it's something I still deal with, even though I look differently. We're talking about 25 years of a certain kind of mentality, of a certain experience, where people definitely act differently. Women act differently. Men, people act differently when you look a certain way. So, is it worse? It's absolutely worse here, because that dynamic is here, and LA is Miami steroids.
Right.
Miami prepared me. If I came to LA straight from Jacksonville, it might have been a culture shock, and I'd be one of these people that either left already or ended up getting turned out,
Right.
by the environment. So, I mean, if anything, LA made my message that much more clear, because you see it on a day-to-day. Like, you see the cosmetic enhancements everywhere you look. You see the billboards, you see the magazines. This is the entertainment capital. Like, you have to look a certain way, quote unquote, to make a living in this business. And the things that my work focuses on, women, and women, what they encounter is just unbelievable. Mind you, I'm speaking from a male point of view, but insecurity is just something that is consistent across the board. It doesn't matter what gender you are, you can relate to insecurity. We all have insecurities, So I think LA definitely just further cemented that I was on the right track with my message, and yeah.
Excellent. We actually just started to segue into my next question, and so your art does feature a lot of refreshingly gynecocentric themes, using positive, empowering motifs, to involving women. Your bio also expresses a strong appreciation, not just for the superficial aesthetics of the woman, but also her inner qualities. And you just starting on that there. Tell me, as a man, how did you come to this understanding, this somewhat of an epiphany? And then I'd like to know, how can other men see the light that you have?
Well, like my mom raised me, so I I've always had a certain kind of appreciation for women, And, you know, and at the same time where my work evolves around insecurity, my work also evolves around duality, you know, and that's something that, you know, as much as I talk about the insecurities that lead to cosmetic enhancements, you know, I have an appreciation for beauty. I have an appreciation for outer beauty, which is, you know, it's not to say my work is against outer beauty. It's just about the underlying things that would lead you to alter your unique appearance, the way that you're brought into this world, which is like, that's pretty disturbing to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very disturbing, and it's just creating carbon copies. Like you know, and at this day and age, I mean, it's incredible to see how quickly that movement is growing. You know, I couldn't talk about the specific percentages, but I know you know, year by year, the number of enhancements that are done are growing tremendously. You know, so I mean, the appreciation I have for women, I mean, I don't know necessarily how somebody else could come to that appreciation, but that's just the way I look at things. You know, none of us would be here without a woman. No matter how you feel, you can't deny that fact. You know, everything we do as men is for a woman. It's, you know, in one way or another. You know, so like, there's just a lot of power that, you know, women have in general, just their being. I mean, I like to say that, you know, women are God's greatest creation, just a natural work of art. I mean, you could literally just take a picture of a woman and in her natural being, whether she's, you know, fully clothed or whatever, and that's art. You know, how many people are not going to love that? I mean, I call that the cheat code, you know, just doing anything that evolves around women. That's the cheat code. So I understand the dynamic that's there. But, you know, it's just I guess, you know, the love and the appreciation for women and wanting to see more, like looking at, I guess, trying to gauge where things are going. Things look very scary for just the woman species, you know. We're going to wake up one day and it's all just going to be robots. Everybody's going to look exactly the same. They're going to have these Kim Kardashian features, and it's going to be, you know, an awful nightmare.
I hear you. I hear you. That's sort of that's very dystopian. You think of, you know, the ability to, you know, affect genetics now. There may be a point where people can, you know, look in a book and say, I want this feature, this feature, this feature. You know, and that is, you're right, that is a very scary future to think of. And hopefully we'll be smart enough to not go down that road. As long as we've got artists out there to inspire, maybe we can prevent that from happening.
I don't know if I have that much faith in the human race, man.
I don't either, but you know, you got to have hope. You got to have hope.
Oh yeah,
but I'm there with you. So some of my favorite pieces you've done are the jazz and hip hop series that you've done. Really incredible pieces. And so what I want to ask you is, so as an African American, how does your experience being African American affect your art? Now, I've seen it in series like that, but as a whole, is there a general theme, or is there something that is that part of your insecurity that you talked about before?
I mean, you know, the African American experience is it's a unique experience in its own. I mean, it definitely impacts me because I'm African American and I'm a male. I mean, you know, it doesn't take a genius to turn on a television or just open up Facebook and you see what's going on in this day and age. It's scary. It's very scary. And that's the reality of the African American experience. My personal experience, I think just the fact that I'm African American, like, that's the truest connection to my art. Everything I do is going to have a piece of that attached. But honestly, when it comes to my portraits, you know, my work is more about diversity. Like, I never really want to pigeonhole myself into one space or one box. And bigger than that, my life experience doesn't match with that. I didn't. If I went to all black schools all my life, lived in all black neighborhoods, then maybe everything I was doing would truly be impacted by the African American experience, or maybe my work would be a little different. But I've always been around diversity. My dad was in the military. I'm actually used to being like one or two of the only African American kids in class. I went to an all black school for college, and I went for 2 years, but that was really the extent of that. So, my work, it's always going to be impacted because I'm that, but I love for my work to speak to a bigger audience. I want my work to speak to as many people as possible and impact as many lives as possible.
Excellent. I think that fits in with you're a very cosmopolitan person in your approach, and that diversity is important to that. So let's talk about. I want to talk about the evolution of your art. So in the time that you've been, associated with Empty Sink, and maybe slightly before, but I've sort of noticed an evolution of your work. When we got your first three pieces, The Veils of Carnality, Toujours, and Ignorant Butterflies, only the last one resembled your more surrealistic, your cubistic recent style. The other ones were more of a merging and blending type of style. What was there a transition there, or what was going on with that?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because when we were speaking earlier about, when we first connected, I was going to mention that, like, I was pretty sure the first few submissions were in my earlier style, and we just happened to connect at a point where, I was creating looking for a lane that I could call my own. I was just trying to find something that I could, put my foot down on and claim as my own. So, like, there was just a unique period, and Ignorant Butterflies is literally the very first piece that I did in my vanity pop style that you'll see from me. Like, that's all you'll see from me now, aside from, the music pieces that I was doing then as well. Mm-hmm. But it was just a natural progression, from the music pieces, which I was doing then. You see the cubism aspect, you see the colorful palette that I use, which is still very apparent in my work now. It just really evolved. I knew that I needed to have a distinct style, something that you come to expect from me. Yeah. And the biggest thing, honestly, was that the earlier creations, they weren't challenging me. They weren't challenging me at all. Like, I can do those things in my sleep. The music pieces I can do in my sleep, literally. It took me like 2-3 days to do, and they're beautiful. They all sell, but it wasn't challenging me as a creator. And I'm a creator that really loves, appreciates, and yearns for substance. Mm-hmm. Maybe not 24/7, because I understand there's a time and a place for everything, but substance is a must. And I wanted to find something that challenged me consistently. And that first piece just kind of happened organically. And after that, I think I did a few more in that style. And, based on the reception, I was just like, okay, I have something here. Let me continue to create and develop the story. And that's just kind of how things unraveled. And, with my vanity pop style, in essence, I'm fusing multiple genres. I mean, you have the cubism aspect, you have the surrealism, you have the hyperrealism, photorealism, the fashion design. So you have all these different things, and it's like I threw them in a pot, created a gumbo, and I was able to find my own lane. And ironically, I always tell people in music, when I'm consulting artists, like, that's kind of how you create your own sound. That's how new sounds are being created now. Everybody grew up, on rock or, all these different genres, and they're just fusing it into maybe one main genre, and that's how you're getting these new movements created. So I just, I pretty much just did the same thing with art, found my lane, and, from here it's just about creating, mastering, just been mastering it for the past few years. We probably connected maybe 3-4 years ago,
Yep.
because I know I've been mastering. I've been a professional artist since 2011, I believe. And I mean, that's not that long ago. And I've been mastering the vanity pop style for the past 3 years. So
Yeah. And the word I would use that I've at least that I've from what I've noticed is matured. There's a
yes,
maturation process that you've gone through with that, going from ignorant butterflies through all the different things. And like you said, you're adding different elements. Each recipe, you've got a different spice you're adding to it. Something a little bit different, and I can feel that you've come to a zone, like the baseball player who's hitting home runs, or the rock star who can just wail every time. You're in that zone right now.
I am, honestly, man. It's funny you say that, because I am, and I'm just having, like, I'm in a real pocket right now. I'm having fun. I know what it is that people love and kind of expect from me. So I think the bigger thing for me, the biggest challenge for me at this point is dumbing down my creations to keep things in pace, because where I'm at mentally with my creations is probably a few years ahead, and I have to really kind of scale back, because with each piece I want you to see that growth. So I'm glad you see that. Like, I want each piece to be different and truly unique to itself. So making sure that happens is definitely a must, but also keeping it, in pocket until it's time.
Right.
As much as a lot of these pieces are old to me, but then I'm like, well, there's so many people that haven't seen them. So, I can't get in that mentality just because I see them so often. So,
Right.
yeah.
So since you're in this zone, do you have a ritual that you go through for creating your art, or do you have a sort of certain activities that you do to inspire yourself, or does it just all kind of come spontaneously to you?
Um, Man, I get a lot of inspiration from like high-end fashion magazines, and more so foreign fashion magazines, because they it's a lot more edgy, and they just, they're ahead of us on when it comes to different trends like fashion and things of that nature. So I'll get a lot of inspiration there. I'll have my own shoots to where I'll, to get those juicy lips, or those eyes that people love. Not all the time, there's always a mixture of things going on. And I create my concept small scale. I created small scale, maybe at an 8x8. I mean, it varies, because I have some, I'm looking now, I mean, I have some concepts that are 8x8, some that are 12x12, some that are 20x20. It just depends. So I just create these ideas and concepts. I'm going to see if I can show you.
Awesome.
In the background, there's my table over there.
Very
A
cool.
bunch of concepts. Let me see.
Yeah.
I have another table over here with more concepts.
That's
Like
awesome.
yeah. So I mean, I just, I'm just creating, and it happens so quickly. I mean, I create these portraits that you see happen, typical on average, like a matter of 5 minutes or so.
Wow.
I come up with the concept, and like I said, I leave them once I feel like they're done, but I just leave them out to make sure. And that's progress as I've continued to create, because initially I would do them one at a time. I would create a concept, paint it. Once I was done, go in, create a concept. But honestly, the way I move, I spend more time marketing than I actually do creating. I spend more time marketing, and I don't consider painting actually creating, because that's the work of it. My concept is already done, and that's the actual creating part. So I just kind of came to terms recently within this year that, you know what, I need to up my creative output, because that's going to allow me to grow that much quicker, as opposed to if I'm doing this one by one. So now as you see, I have 6 concepts lying around, just to kind of evolve a little quicker and just make sure I stay on my toes, and keep the work fresh, making sure I really, really love the pieces.
Well,
So
you mentioned that you're always looking to be challenged as well. So sounds like putting more of an industrious attitude towards it is challenging a little more, isn't it?
Oh, definitely, definitely. It's definitely challenging because the I guess the biggest challenge now is I'll have these six pieces out, and I feel like initially when I set them there, I feel like I love them, and then I might be ready to start on this specific next piece, but then all of a sudden I love this other piece. I'm that much more excited about another concept that I have laying around. So it's then that becomes the problem of
Right.
which do I start on, or so I'm still figuring it out. I mean, day to day is just it's just that figuring life out. I can't say there's a set protocol of how things are supposed to go or what to expect, but there's definitely a general consistency there.
I gotcha. Now you mentioned, putting a lot of effort into your marketing and such. One of the things that I have noticed, and the way that I have followed you these past several years, is your presence on social media. And you're really active on social media, and you're especially attentive to your audience and your fans on an intimate level. And I've always admired this. I thought that that was really just something really cool about you. Explain to me how that has affected your success, and if whether or not the feedback you get from your fans and your followers, if that influences your art at all.
I think it's definitely impacted my success. I mean, I would not be successful without people like you, without people that support what I'm doing, what I'm creating. Whether it's support in whether it's a featuring me, or whether it's support of purchasing on some of the artwork, or even just following what I'm doing and leaving comments. I mean, that's very important. And I've been an underdog all my life, man. Like, nothing has ever been handed to me, and that's just not the life that I know. And I embrace that. And with that same breath, like, I'm a consumer. And I think a lot of times most creators, they kind of lose sight that we're consumers as well. So, in a general sense, I treat people how I want to be treated. That's just kind of my, a model that I live by in life. So, when it comes to moving as a brand, there's no team, there's me. I do everything for myself. So it's an absolute must that I interact with everyone and that I stay active, because as a consumer, if I spend 1 cent on a product you created, like, that's time, that's energy, that's money that are all extremely valuable. Like, those are all things that, I don't think people appreciate enough when they're in the position to where you have a brand or a product to present. So, I mean, that's extremely important in that aspect. How, like, just imagine, you're a fan of McDonald's and you send McDonald's a tweet and they don't reply or they don't say anything. Like, I'm sure that kind of stuff happens, but it's like, really, you're too big to interact with the people that keep you eating, that keep you alive.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Without that interaction, I wouldn't be making a living. Period. So I owe all of this. I'm always going to interact with my fans, and it's even bigger now than ever, because in this day and age, a lot of galleries aren't doing that well. The great thing about the digital age we live in is you can cut out the middleman. Like, I have a lot of amazing relationships with galleries, thank God. But I made a post recently where I sold one of my pieces, Ribbon in Her Eyes, to one of my Instagram followers. And I was a little leery, because I've sold on via social media before, but it was always to somebody that I know. So this was a complete stranger, follows me, loved my work. He asked me to send him a picture, of some other pictures of the piece, aside from what's on my website, which is just the digital image. So I went, something about me, I always shoot for above and beyond in everything I do. So, I think that ties into this conversation as well.
Uh-huh.
So I not only send them pictures, but I send them video. I just want to make sure you see everything that you want to see. Obviously, I know there's a sale at stake, a potential sale at stake. But, for me, whether you buy now, whether you buy later, whether you're a fan, it's all about the long run. It's all about longevity. So everything I'm doing is to make sure that my brand, everything I'm doing has longevity. So it's all just a cycle,
Right.
we feed off of each other, period. So yeah, man, I mean, I honestly never really understand those creators that, don't interact with fans or reply to comments or things of that nature, unless you just don't have the time. But you could still hire somebody, to do that kind of thing, because it goes so far. I mean, I've had so many times where people show up to shows, gallery shows, people purchase, and that's how it happened. They saw it on social media. That happens so often. So that's very important. I forgot what the second half of that question was.
Okay, so you really pretty much just got it all. I just wanted you to explain to me how that affected your success.
Oh yeah.
But you encompassed all of that. But you mentioned something there about feeding off. And one of the other things I've noticed with social media is you have a very positive message, and you're constantly giving back to your fans and followers by giving self-empowering themes. Can you tell me the message that you want to get across to your followers, and in more depth than just a 140 character tweet or a short Facebook post? What is the message that you're trying to get out to people about believing in themselves and self-empowerment?
Man, self-empowerment. That's that sums it up. I mean, just, loving yourself 1,000%. I mean, it's so, it's something that's really taken for granted, and it's something that firsthand I can speak on, because I haven't always loved myself 1,000%. I haven't. It's something that I'm still working on to this day. So I think it's important, because it's something that we all deal with. Who feels that they're perfect in a realistic conversation. So I'm a real positive person. That's always been who I am, full of love. I want to see, not in a cliche way, but it's just how I move.
Right.
Peace, love, happiness. Like I like to, Vakseen represents being the cure. That's what Vakseen represents. Be the cure, which means we could talk about and complain about anything that's going on in this world, or we can take action and be that change that we want to see. So I could talk about how hateful people are. I could talk about this and that, but my walk reflects differently. My walk reflects what I want, what I choose to represent, and what I want to see in the world, and what better than to share that gift with the world, whether you follow suit or not. I mean, that's neither here nor there, because I'm sharing my gift. I'm sharing and making an impact the best way possible, through the art, through, the information that I share, which I think is important. There's just so many people have a platform, and my platform is small compared to so many others with larger platforms. So I just really commend people that take that time to share something positive with that platform, because that's definitely what the world needs more of. We have enough negativity and all that horrible stuff on a day-to-day basis. So I just share the things that I want to see. I share things that touch me, messages that come to me and touch me. Okay, this touched me. Let me share it with somebody else, because it has to share. It has to impact somebody else. Because we're all connected in some form or fashion. We're not that different.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And I want to touch on something real quick. That Vakseen is not just a United States phenomenon now. You've gone international. I know that you've been out in Korea and a few other places. Tell me a little bit about the expansion of your enterprise.
Oh man, yeah. This year, last year we took our first trip out to Korea and kind of dove into the K-pop world there, and it's been incredible. It's really been incredible. Truly a blessing that they're receptive to what we're creating. And basically I have my team of producers and songwriters that we're working with SM Entertainment, which is like one of the top companies if not the top company in K-pop. And, we've officially partnered up to where we're writing songs for their artists. And, while you can talk to plenty of people that have never heard of their artists, we're talking about artists that are going platinum platinum in a week. And that's not happening here in the US. So, right. It's just to see the big things that they're doing, not just on a business side, but honestly, what I really love about the opportunity is that they allow us to just be us as creators. Everything that you would want to do as a creator here in the US is you're kind of kept in a box and you're not allowed to do those things, but in Korean culture, they're huge on musicality. They love experimentation. They love the craft. They love mastering the craft. So you get to really show out and flex with all of the, the talents that you have as a creator. Mind you, keeping it pocket to structures and things like that they love and appreciate, or the fans come to expect. But we get more appreciation as musicians overseas than you might get here. Working in the business, which is it's funny to because I've had success here, I've had success overseas. I mean, one of my biggest records, period, is a worldwide international hit. So I mean, I've definitely seen the worldwide success, but honestly, I love to travel. I love to be engaged with different culture. And that's exactly what this opportunity is. And it's just really blossomed into a fruitful relationship. And it's just the beginning. Literally, we've been there in the market for just a year. And thus far, we have, I believe, 7 releases. I think 3 of them were on one album. And I mean, all of them have been #1 albums. So, I mean, that just says, what we're doing. And bigger than that, we already have, I want to say I have close to 20 more records that are definitely releasing. And that's, mind you, that's just up until, this is just a year in.
Right.
So we're talking about like almost 30 records within a year, and only 7 of them have been released. This is setting me up for the future. And bigger than anything, like, honestly, the music, the things I've done in music helps me pursue art the way that I want to, because I'm doing very well in art on a from a business level, but between the two, it balances everything out to where I can really focus and not have to go work a 9-to-5 job working for somebody else.
It's got to be great. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people are envious of your position, but you've worked really hard to get there.
You're right. You're very right. I mean, I've worked in the music business for 11, 12 years now professionally. I've been pursuing music collectively for over 20 years. I mean, that's a lot of work put in to be in the position where I am now, where, I mean, since I moved to LA, I've been working for myself, and, thank God that's what the rest of my life looks like. That's how it looks like things will be.
Right.
Or if I do work with somebody else, it'll be a partnership, a strategic partnership that's mutually beneficial, as opposed to just me clocking in and hating life.
Right. Well, you've done it right, man. You've done it right. So I want to ask you a couple quick questions here as we sort of wrap up. All right. So first of all, who's your favorite contemporary artist? And it could be visual or sound. It doesn't matter.
Good, because I'm horrible about that. Honestly, I know some of the greats in art, but I'm not I'm a fan of creators, period. So I go out and just experience art. Anytime there's art shows, I'm there. But to say I have a favorite, it's a funny question, because I've never truly locked in with anyone in that aspect. To put somebody else on a level of being an idol to me. That's kind of where I hold it parallel to that question parallel to.
Right.
So I just don't look at creativity that way. There's a lot of people that I really appreciate. A lot of them are obviously I'm in LA, so I'm seeing more of the artists that are showing here, and there's so many dope artists here. I do some curating as well, so I get firsthand dibs on a lot of these artists. Um, so not to dance around your question, but just a little backstory of why it won't specifically be answered. But musician wise, I mean, there's a lot of artists that I really love and appreciate what they're doing. I mean, hip hop is my foundation. Like that's my background. Like
Right.
that's what's always been my favorite. But I just love music in general, jazz, rock, R&B, soul, you name it. I love music and have an appreciation for it. I mean, I love what Kendrick's doing. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I love what Future's doing.
Hmm.
Huge D'Angelo fan, Bilal. I just went and saw Parliament Funkadelic last weekend.
Awesome.
They're OG musicians that we have them to thank for the hip hop culture. So I mean,
Absolutely.
I love a lot of different music.
That works for me, man. All right. So speaking of hip hop, this is an argument a buddy of mine and I have, and I like to ask other people what their opinion is. So Dr. Dre versus Ice Cube, who is more successful?
Whew. Oh man, um, it's a good question. It's a good question because off top, I would say Dre. I think in a blank, the first impulse is Dr. Dre. That's my first impulse because you got to think. Not only did he produce all these classics. I mean, you got to think Eminem. That's his publishing. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
50 Cent, Snoop, Kendrick. I mean, all of these major stars. He created these artists. They're signed to his label, so he's seeing a good chunk of that success. Not to mention Beats,
Hmm.
which is huge. But the part that makes me say, is the fact that Ice Cube has been so successful in Hollywood and movies. I mean, when you put movies and music on a scale, I mean, movies are just hold so much more weight than music. I mean, honestly, music is chump change compared to movies. So that's what kind of makes me say, And I mean, he has, the major successes of your Fridays and, things of that nature, but that's a great question. I think I'll stick with the initial impulse, Dr. Dre.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Stick with
I'll,
that.
I'll tell you, my answer is Ice Cube. For really the reasons that you said, his facial recognition is far more broad than
Yeah.
Dre. I always felt that people, usually the people who answer Dre, focus more on his monetary success, whereas I feel like Ice Cube has been more of a he's more broad. He's been able to succeed in a lot greater, wider fields than Dre. So it is a good question, and I'm very happy with your answer. This may be an easier question. It may make you think a bit. What was your favorite Saturday morning cartoon back in the day?
I don't know if it was on Saturday, but He-Man. I was a
Okay.
He-Man junkie. Like I
Yeah.
had all the little action figures. Man, I had pictures of me with like He-Man birthday cakes and all that good stuff. I mean, He-Man, hands down. I was definitely a huge Thundercats fan, and I can name a bunch of other things, but He-Man, hands down.
I hear you, and I'll take that. The Saturday morning was just more of the cartoon. When you think about the '80s, you think about the Saturday
Yeah,
morning cartoons. All right, so
definitely.
what's your biggest pet peeve?
Uh, just fakeness at any level.
Uh
Fakeness. I probably have a few pet peeves.
huh.
Fakeness, people not following through with what they say, just people not being accountable.
Right.
But fakeness is probably the worst, and that's been a challenge living here in LA.
I
It's
bet.
really been a challenge because this is a city that thrives on that culture.
It sure does. So you've done a lot of traveling. What are your top three favorite cities around the world? Your favorite three places to go?
Oh man, um, LA is definitely one of them.
Uh huh.
Rome was amazing, definitely. LA on a consistency basis, I have to say Miami as of right now.
Okay.
Because Miami, I mean, Miami's like where the whole the sentimental value. Because that's like where my life got started. And Miami's an amazing place that people come to from around the world to spend time there, and living there for 7-8 years was just, it was amazing. I mean, that's the reason why we're talking. If I hadn't lived there, we would we'd never be talking right now.
Oh, you're right.
So it started my career. LA's taken my career and life to another level, but even bigger than just career, just the experience, the culture in LA and Miami versus anywhere else. I really enjoy all the places I've been to. As much as I want to say Seoul, I mean, every time the 2 times I've been to South Korea, it's been for business. I love it, but I haven't been able to really dive in, like I want to. So it's just about I guess the consistency, like I said. So those are my answers for right now. Next time we have an interview, it'll be different.
And that's great. I like that approach, because usually that question changes for me. The answers to that question each time you ask me. So that's a good sign that you're constantly in evolution.
Yeah.
So wrapping up here, what's in store for Vakseen in 2017?
Man, growth, evolution. I have a lot of great things in the works. Funny, somebody reached out to me about getting in, trying to see if I would be a part of a show that they were doing today, and I actually had to turn it down because I'm pre-booked throughout the end of the year, going into February. I just got my first grant. Technically, I'm not supposed to be talking about it, so you won't see it on social media or anything, but I'll share it with you.
Thanks.
That's what you see in the background. It's my first grant with the city of LA, and we were given a sculpture to create. It's an angel sculpture, and the theme is we are the future, and what that means to us. So that's something that I'm working on now. I have a lot of great gallery shows coming up through the end of the year. It's just about evolving. I take one day at a time, but evolution is definitely a must. Just growing, continuously releasing the highest quality material possible, bringing new people into my circle, if you will, bringing in new followers, new fans, new supporters. Looking for different opportunities to really expand. I have some opportunities on my plate now that I'm really excited about that are new. I believe in not talking about things until they actually are in stone.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you there.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited. Actually, 2017. I mean, this year, you got to keep in mind, like, I've only been a professional artist for 4 years now.
Right.
So which is incredible. I mean, it's the things I've been able to accomplish in these 4 years. I think it's kind of catching a lot of people off guard. And when I talk to certain, people I really respect in the gallery world, whether it's or in the art world, whether it's gallery owners, curators, or what have you, they always kind of let me know, like, we've never seen an artist with your thought process, with your hustle, and lets me know I'm on the right path. But it's just about continuing to create these strategic alliances, to get my merch into bigger outlets. I definitely want to dive more into the fashion side of things. That evolves around my designs. So just one day at a time, not getting too overwhelmed, too ahead of myself, and just keeping things organic, man. Like, that's truly one of the biggest and most important things about me as a creator. Everything is organic. Everything is about the vibe, the energy, and nothing can be forced. Everything just has to fall into right place naturally, and that's what happens.
I love it. The process apparently works too.
Yes.
So
yes.
my last question. So what advice do you have for any aspiring artists out there who may be listening or reading this? What kind of wisdom can you impart upon them?
Man, have a lifetime of experience, which is definitely why I share so much as well. So hopefully, people can avoid those kind of mistakes. Embrace mistakes. Understand you can always. Nothing's the end of the world. Work your ass off, but work smart, not hard. Always strategize. Always have goals that you're working towards. Strategic movements are they're so imperative. Strategic movements. Key relationships are everything. Your relationships are everything, not who you know, but who knows you. And just consistency, consistent quality content. Like that's huge. There's so much that I can share and that I'm always willing to share with up and coming talent. Just trust yourself. I think that's probably one of the bigger things. Trust yourself, trust your judgment. Because that's one thing about this journey. What I'm creating now, my vanity pop paintings, they're unique. They're unique. Nobody's ever seen something like this. Even the stuff that people will show me somewhat similar, I'm like, nah, that's a collage. Or no, that has nothing, we're completely different. But I can tell you that it's challenging. It's very challenging when you're doing something that's unique, but it's most rewarding. I can tell you that I get plenty of no's, and I know it's not because of the quality, because I know my quality's on point. But a lot of the times people don't know what to do with it. People don't, most people are they see black and white. Most people don't necessarily have vision. And a lot of times people are, it's about the bandwagon. Who's on board with XYZ? I've had so many gallery curators, tell me, just because I know, we're close and friends, that those are the things that they look at. What's their following like? That's crazy. A gallery is gonna be concerned with your following if they want to show you in the gallery. Like, I'm concerned with your following. What do you mean?
Exactly.
So, but I understand it. I definitely get it. But point being, it takes a little longer when you're doing something truly unique. And I can tell you when I truly transitioned from my older style that you saw to the vanity pop style. I went from where I was selling, everything sold. Like, to this day, I might have two pieces from my older style. And even now, when I do the music pieces, they sell like that. Like, they sell, by the time I post the first work in progress shot, they're typically sold.
Nice.
Nice. You go from that to my vanity pop style, where when I made that initial transition, I didn't sell one of those pieces for a year, a little bit over a year. So I went from selling everything to not selling a thing. I would sell prints, but not originals. But then that second year, I got the first sale. And then slowly, one after the other, they started to pick up to where they're selling consistently now, and if I hadn't believed in myself, if I hadn't been, persistent and just really know I was onto something, I would have gave it up. And I've seen so many creators do that, whether it's trying to look like the current artist that's hot, whether it's, going chasing after a style or what have you. It's not the move. You want to have your own unique voice, your own lane, and have that patience and understanding that it might not happen overnight, but as long as you trust what you're doing and you're doing something great, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So.
Well, we'll be sure to share all of your social media contacts so our audience can follow you and learn alongside of you as you go on and continue your path. Otha, I want to thank you very much for spending time with me today. It's been a great talk. I hope that you've had a good time too. And we will talk again, hopefully, in the near future. Good luck with everything.
Man, thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. And it's, like I said, you've been one of my day one supporters, and that means the world to me. So thank you so much. We'll definitely continue to build. And, best of luck in the new endeavors as well.
Thank you very much. Take care, man.
You're welcome, man. Peace.
Peace.